Welcome to 4P360, the bonus lesson. We're talking about whole life leadership. So in the series, we've been talking specifically about business leadership, and that is the extent of the leadership in organizations. Basically, it's formal power structures, formal hierarchies, formal organizations, corporations, businesses, LLCs, not-for-profits. For the bonus lesson, we're talking about the 4P360 concept as it applies everywhere. 4P360 is a whole life leadership system. 4P360 applies everywhere. It's not just for leadership in business. It's not just for leadership in formal structures and organizations. It's a fundamental system for living life. Whether alone even, or in any relationship that involves one or more other people. We could be talking one-on-one, we could be talking families, we could be talking larger groups of friends. So consider the 4 pillars. The 4 pillars are powerful, practical, principled, and positive. When you are living your life, power just means, are you getting stuff done? Do you have the power to control yourself? And are you exercising that power to control yourself to get your stuff done? So all of us can live lives of power, where we make a difference, where the fact we made a choice, we made a decision, we move forward on something makes a difference. And then practical. Who couldn't benefit from practical? Practical just means that you're doing things that you can now forge into a habit. And if you maintain those habits, you're going to have a practically positive result. And then principle. Living a life of principle so that every single situation you encounter in your entire life doesn't have to be individually evaluated with no starting point. Now, when it comes to principles in particular, I'm going to pause here for a moment because some people feel like, well, I don't like to be constrained. That's too strict. That's too black and white. I have something I call the rule on rules. I mentioned it during the program, and the rule on rules is, unless there's a good reason to do otherwise. We use this in martial arts. We use this in law. We use this all over the place. The rule is the rule. The principle is the principle. The law is the law, unless there's a good reason to do otherwise. So, like, we have speeding laws. Are there emergency situations we say, okay, well, that's a good enough reason to not have to obey those laws? Even when it comes to something as severe as taking a life, we have rules in effect that say there are some circumstances that are so serious that it is okay to take a life under these circumstances. And so just taking that same idea to other things, you can develop your principles, and some of those principles will be in tension. Like you may have a principle that says family is more important than business. But now you have a conflict between family and business. In a vacuum, well, you always choose your family over your business. But when it comes down to the particular moment, while family overall might be a higher value, the nature of the emergency or the nature of the crisis in the business setting or the nature of the project or the nature of the opportunity might say, for right now, given these circumstances, I will choose the business over the family. So when you have principles, principles are your starting point. They're your grounding. They're your center. You might not always be able to follow your principles and obey your own values exactly moment by moment, situation by situation, but it always gives you a solid starting point, even if you have a balance of principles and a balance of ideals. And then positive. How many of us wouldn't like more positive in our life? We wouldn't like to be treated in a positive way. That we wouldn't like to have a more positive attitude. So when you look at the 4 pillars, powerful, practical, principled, and positive, well, these are 4 things all of us would like to show up with more in our life, things that all of us would like to have more coming to us in our lives. And so when it comes to the 4 pillars of the 4P360 system, well, that sounds like a good way to live life. And let's look at the 4 rules: copper, silver, gold, platinum. I'm going to take these starting with the golden rule. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Have others do unto you as you would like done unto you. And so that whole reflexive thing that's been around for thousands of years, and every culture around the world has had some version of the golden rule. And then the platinum rule variation on the golden rule is treat others the way they would like to be treated, because you would like to be treated the way you want to be treated. And so as simple a thing as if someone stopped up to get some donuts on the way to work or on the way to kind of hanging out with friends, but I happen to be gluten sensitive or I can't have donuts for some other reason, it would be platinum rule for someone to get me like a gluten-free bagel. Or in my particular case, if I'm running one of my diet control cycles and someone knows that I'm on a liquid day, if someone stopped off and picked me up a smoothie instead of a donut. And so things where you take into account the individual and the individual tastes and the individual preferences. Platinum rule level. How many of us wouldn't like to have more of that in our lives? How many of us would like to be doing that for the people that matter the most to us? That we do the things that make the difference that we want to make for the people that are important to us. And then the silver rule and the platinum variation on the silver rule, don't do to people what you don't want done to yourselves, that you don't want people doing to you things you don't want them to do to you, especially if you know they wouldn't like it if you did it to them. And so you want them to show you the same level of respect. And then the platinum version of that, where if it's idiosyncratic to the individual, well, adjust to that. And then the copper rule, which in my estimation is one that gets overlooked probably the most, is just to think through it. How many of us in our lives would benefit from just thinking through things more? Thinking about what is the outcome that we're after? What is the big picture? That when we get a week, a month, a year, 10 years down the line, where do we want to be going? What's our compass heading? What's our direction? What are we hoping to accomplish? And just think through this moment right here, right now, in that context. But very often we get caught up in moments. We get caught up in the emotion of the moment. We get caught up in the argument. We get caught up in the dispute. We get caught up in the crisis. We get caught up in the problem. And we forget in those moments that there's a much bigger picture and we don't think through it. Or we just try to kind of kick the can on down the road, not realizing sometimes that works. Sometimes you just need to buy yourself time. Sometimes kicking the can down the road is going to make it worse, and sometimes there's not that much road to kick it down. And we need to be aware of, what are our options? And is kicking it down the road a reasonable option? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. If you think through it, you can evaluate whether or not that's going to be the case. So the 4 pillars: powerful, practical, principled, and positive. The 4 rules: copper, silver, gold, platinum. And then consider the directions: down, up, across, diagonal down, diagonal up. When you use the pillars as a foundation, when you use the rules as a way of governing things, and you look at your directions and you use your directions as a check. The part of the way you check to see how you're doing is there a down version, an up version, and an across version of this principle? Or does this principle only apply in one direction? If it only applies in one direction, you should be a little bit more suspect of it. Because in all of our relationships, there's some version of one of these dynamics going on. Someone's influencing someone. And very often, everyone's influencing everyone. And is this an up relationship, a down relationship? In our personal lives, most of them are going to be lateral relationships, adult to adult. But then there's diagonal down and diagonal up. All of these happen in day-to-day life as well. And then consider the double O leadership, the double O self-leadership, the double O reverse leadership, where it's all internal to yourself. How do I lead me? How do I show others what works on me? How often does that take place in life? Pretty much all the time. So 4P360 is a whole life system. The 4 pillars, the 4 principles, and the 7 direction check help us live our day-to-day lives. So if you learn it for business, it's not just for business. You could also take this home. You could take this home to a family. You could take this into a friendship. You could take this into a group of friends. These principles apply everywhere. And look about what we talked about at the very beginning, what leadership is. Leadership is influence. We are constantly influencing things around us. I show up in a room, and my presence makes a difference in that room. As soon as I start interacting with people, as soon as the room responds to the fact that I am in that room, I am having an influence. Is it an intentional influence? Is it a positive influence? A negative influence? Is it making things easier? Is it making things harder? Leadership is influence. And intentional leadership means you are deciding what influence you are trying to have. And by the way, it won't always work. Some people will react to things in sometimes unpredictable ways. And that's just going to be the deal. That's just how that works. Leadership is decision making. And when we get to decision making, all of us could use cleaner decisions. All of us can always benefit from making better decisions. Leadership is problem solving. And I'm going to fold in problem solving and challenge overcoming here. A problem is something that will create a negative outcome if it is not handled. Problems do damage if they are not resolved. The solving of a problem just means you develop a solution that stops a thing from getting bad or improves upon the situation using the problem as a launching pad. The definition of a problem is something with a solution. If there's no solution, it's not a problem. It is a fact of life. You adapt to a fact of life. You solve problems. Now, related to that is a challenge. With a challenge, if you leave a challenge alone, nothing bad happens. But if you overcome a challenge, you should be able to achieve something good. And yes, something can be both a problem and a challenge, where if you overcome it, you get a good result, and if you don't do anything about it, you'll end up with a bad result. So you need to do it to avoid the bad, but if you succeed, you get a good. So challenges create good things if you do overcome it, nothing if you don't. And problems create a bad outcome if you don't resolve them and get you back to level playing field, or level ground if you do solve them. We could all benefit from better problem solving. To keep things from falling apart, to keep things from breaking, to maintain things. And we would all benefit from more challenge overcoming, to keep moving our lives forward. Leadership is guidance offering. When you are leading a person, you are offering guidance. Now, this isn't necessarily just in the form of giving someone advice and telling them how to live their lives, but a simpler thing. If I'm going to assume any leadership in any relationship, it can be as simple as just letting people know what works on me. Letting people know what sort of things I like. So it gives them some guidance in how to connect with me, and that's just in a one-on-one relationship. Leadership is the exercise of responsibility. If you have formal leadership, you're fulfilling the responsibilities of your role. Well, if I have, say, the role of a husband, the exercising of the responsibilities of the role of husband is leadership. The exercising responsibilities of the role of father is leadership. Exercising the responsibilities in as simple and undefined a role as friend is leadership. What are the things I'm supposed to do? And then do those without someone else having to tell me is leadership. Leadership is being a good example. Being an example of whatever it is you're supposed to be. In martial arts, we have a term called sensei. Loosely, sensei means teacher. We have a more complete understanding of sensei that is sort of a little bit more detailed than the guardian martial arts that I teach. And it's that a sensei is one who has walked the path and can show others the way. So being a good example is, how are you walking the path? So that when you're showing others the way, you're not just offering guidance on, well, what I think you should do. You're saying, this is what I've done. This is what I'm doing. And that's a sensei mentality. A coach will go do the research, find out what should work, and kind of help you produce an outcome. And we don't expect coaches to be able to do what it is they're teaching because, they're a coach. Like when you watch an NFL game, you don't expect all of the coaches on the sidelines to be able to jump in and take over for any of their players. But for a sensei, the sensei should have been there, done that, knows how to make it work. And so part of being a good example is just embody your values. Embody your mission. Embody what you think a role should be. A simple core example of senseiship and this kind of good example leadership is, don't just talk the talk, show that you walk the walk. And then the big one here, leaders take initiative. Leaders don't wait. Leaders don't need to wait for circumstances to force something on them. Leaders take the best information they have available and they go do something. And why do they do it? Because they decided to do it. They're not always in reaction mode. They're out in front of things. They're being proactive rather than reactive. So when we take these things that we just kind of touch on quickly, let's look at some applications. 4P360 applies in friendships. And three key things about this, or two key things we're talking about this, is curating your community of friends and the rules. Always the rules. But just think about a circle of friends. It could be casual friends where you just kind of get together and you like meet and do something. Maybe you play baseball together, or you go out bowling, or you shoot some hoops. And it's just fairly casual relationships, but it's a circle of friends. In a circle of friends, do you want it to have things powerful, that what you guys are trying to get done gets done? Do you want it to be practical, that however you guys go about taking care of things gets the things taken care of on a consistent basis, so you're not always having to figure out the same stuff again and again? And just think about a simpler thing as this. You're just going to get together with some friends and play basketball. Well, a couple of practical standard operating procedure things is where, when, who has the ball. Simple stuff like that is a very, very simple expression of the practical. And look at principle. How are you going to get together and play? Is it going to be a 2-on-2 if you have a group of 4? What do you do if one of you can't make it? Do you keep rotating? Do you do one-on-ones, one person in, one person out? Do you skip the game completely? Like, what's the principle? How are you going to work this out? And then positive. Why are you getting together? Presumably to have a positive time rather than a negative time. In fact, I ended up on curating your community of friends as curating a circle of friends out for violation of the pillars. That when we got together, there was still some power. We were getting the stuff done we set out to do. Most of the practicalities were still going on. Some of the principles were beginning to get a little fuzzy. And part of that was manifesting because the positive was just gone. That as this particular circle of friends were getting together, it was getting so negative, so nasty, so judgment-oriented, so criticism and complaining-oriented, that I got done with my time with my friends and I was exhausted. Not the good kind of, wow, we had a great workout exhausted. Wow, we really had a lot of fun and we just like left it all on the dance floor kind of exhausted. It was tedious. And some of us have been friends for 10 years. But it was just spiraling down. And it got so bad at one point, and here's how oblivious it got. I took out a boom box that had a recording function in it. I put it in the middle of the table, right in front of everybody. I hit the record button right in front of everybody. Somehow they didn't even notice I did that. And then I handed out a copy of the tape afterwards, just so that they could hear themselves. And some of them were just angry that I would have a problem with any of this. One of them said, like, I had no idea how bad we were when we got going. And he decided he wanted to turn that around. Says, that was bad. When I'm in the middle of it, I didn't realize how bad we were. But, man, when I was listening to that afterwards, I would be embarrassed if my mother heard that. I would be embarrassed if I had some woman I was interested in and that was her introduction to us. I would be embarrassed. And so he just said, you got to clean this up. This is not okay. And I curated that community of friends out because of violation of a core pillar of being positive. It's a social relationship. Social relationships ought to be positive rather than negative. So curating your community of friends, just as leaders curate the community on their team, friends curate their community of friends. And this is a key, often overlooked aspect of leadership among friends. We have to figure out if this is a good connection or not. Because what is the purpose of a friendship? Purpose of a friendship is some measure of companionship, some measure of shared experience. Now, with that particular circle of friends, I could go to movies with them. What I couldn't do is that social interaction, because the core of the social interaction was negativity, judgmentalism, condemning, criticism, complaining, and that was just wearing me down. There was enough of that in my life already. I didn't need more of it in my social relationships. And you kind of decide, what am I building here? Sometimes you get married, and now you're a couple, and you want friends who are couples. Well, you need to kind of curate your circle of friends to build friendships with other couples on purpose. So whatever kind of circles you need to create, mommies with kindergartners, whatever kind of circle you need to create, and circle maybe you need to uncreate. Circle you may need to withdraw from or craft differently. Activities to be shifted or changed. It can be as simple as having activities where a subset of a larger group gets together separate from the larger group. So we had one example. There was a group of people. Some of them were couples. Some of them were singles. And the problem the couples were having was that one of the singles in particular kept inviting himself along. And they didn't really know how to not invite him along, but they were doing a couple thing. And it ended up just being as simple as just to let him know, well, this was just for the couples. And then he was cool with that. Because they would go to do something, he thought that sounded good. He would say, oh, great, can I come along? And you're like, oh, okay. And some of this got pretty big. So like the couples were heading off on like this romantic getaway. And the couples were going off to this resort. Well, the resort sounded cool. Sounded cool to me too. But I kind of saw that, okay, that's kind of a romantic retreat. Then, that's the things, let the couples go. And let the couples go do their couples thing. That's not when they need their single friends along. But this one friend, like his brain just didn't process that. He says, oh, cool thing. Can I come? And because they didn't say no to him, he ended up going along on some pretty big, cool things that was meant to be couples. And so when you're curating your circle of friends, sometimes there's like different levels or types of circles. Like, okay, this is going to be like, we're doing this with the kids. Yeah, it might be a fun and a cool thing for everyone to jump in and go to Disneyland, but this trip specifically is for the kids. So we're going to be spending a lot of our time in Fantasyland, a lot of time on the kiddie rides. We're not going to be hitting all the big roller coaster stuff because we're focusing on the 4, 5, 6-year-olds. And that it's totally okay to create activities with the subgroups within the larger group. And then the rules, always the rules. Always apply the copper, silver, gold, and platinum rule. Most common, of course, the golden rule, because we all hear that. And by extension, the silver and platinum rules, which are really just commentary on the golden rule. But it's the copper rule that most often gets overlooked in friendships. The thing about what is the big picture of this friendship? What is the big picture of this circle of friends? Is this going anywhere? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What is it about? Is it about just getting together because we've always gotten together and so we're just getting together just by momentum? And that it's not building anything, it's not helping anybody, it's not a good use of anyone's time, maybe it's even getting tedious, maybe we're all in different life situations, we've started to walk different paths, and we're just doing it because we're doing it. And sometimes that requires really looking at what is the big picture here. Maybe we're happy to help in a crisis, but what we don't realize that we've started doing is we become codependent on each other. That one or two of us is always in crisis and the others are always running to the rescue, and the rescue runners kind of like the feeling of being needed, and the one in crisis always gets attention by always having problems, and nothing's actually getting solved. It's just this ongoing cycle, this ongoing problem. Or sometimes friends covering for friends and they're kind of creating this, enabling the worst of this behavior rather than safety netting to take risky good challenges. And you have to take a look at it and sometimes think through it and big picture it a bit. It's like, ultimately, what are we after? And if some of your stuff had to do with getting together when you were younger and engaging in some of these sometimes really intense, high-risk, adrenaline-inducing activities, but you're kind of getting older now, and your body doesn't bounce back from this stuff quite as much. Or it could have been the circle of friends would get together and they'd go partying. But, that worked really well when you were in your 20s. And, now some of you are married. Some of you are into careers. Some of you are kind of getting into a stage of life where that's no longer kind of who you are. But you still kind of get together for that kind of stuff just because you always have. And kind of think through, like, what evolution to these relationships are we going to pursue? Can we create a shift? Can we even just talk about it? Do we even have the kind of friendship where we can have communication? And sometimes a lot of friends they'll just drift in and drift out, and sometimes lose some good friendships because they never really thought it through, and they just sort of fade away when maybe they didn't have to. So the 4P360 applies in friendships. You look at all of those things we talked about. You look at the pillars. You look at the rules. You look at all of the directions and how those interact and the interplay of the directions and how those show up in friendships. And you see that most of those apply just even in a casual friendship group. And the more intimately connected you are with a deeper and stronger and a more vibrant friendship, the more important some of these things become. It applies in families. 4P360 applies in families. When you look at the pillars and the rules, like all those that work in your family, right? But in particular, let's look at the directions. All directions in family leadership. So when I was a kid, and I'm with my mom, Okay? If I want to influence my mom, that's leading up. So if I wanted to get my mother to take me someplace, I have to persuade my mother to take me someplace. What strategies am I going to use for that? Am I going to try to be powerful? Yes, because I want my outcome. Am I going to try to be practical? Because if I might be thinking right here, right now in this moment, but there's going to be a long game being played. So the practicality has to do with that long game. Principle, do I know how she works and how she makes these decisions? And then positive, do I want to yell, scream, complain, whine my way into what I want? Or do I want her to want to give me what I want? Some of that has to do with copy rule. Am I thinking through the long game here? Am I behaving in a way that if it gets bounced back to me, I'm going to like that, and so I'm not breaking the silver rule? Am I treating my mother the way I hope to be treated when I'm the grown-up? And am I treating my mother the way I know she likes to be treated? There's particular things I know that she likes. And all of these things feed into that, and it's a lead-up relationship when you're the kid. Now, once I'm a legal adult, but I was in college, I was still living at home, who's still paying the bills? Still my mom. So that's still a lead-up relationship. Now, when you're all adults, it gets a little more complicated, because on one hand, it's a lead-up in the sense that I'm honoring my mother and father. But on the other hand, there's also no line authority. And so I treat it like a lead up, but they gain great benefit by treating it like a lead across. And then you create this interesting dynamic when I'm trying to influence my parents with a lead up strategy, and they're trying to influence their son with a lead across strategy, that they no longer presume a line of authority. Depending upon how close the relationship is and the circumstances, they can use the diagonal down strategies. And especially if I'm married. If I'm married, then I will use lead across strategies with my spouse. If my parents want to intervene, well, they have no line authority over us, and now they have to try to influence in a way that enhances this lateral relationship. And by the way, with the spouses, to keep in mind, there's a bigger context to each of us as individuals too, and so there's that other person dynamic that creates the diagonal complications. But all directions. 4P360 leadership is a great principle to teach a family with kids, to teach your kids how to do lead up. Teaching kids to lead up to parents as parents lead their children and siblings lead each other, because leading your kids is a lead down, especially when they're minors. Siblings leading each other tends to be a lead across. And parents leading their children's friends, that's a diagonal down. And being in someone else's house trying to influence your friend's parents, that's a diagonal up. All of it shows up. We're using all of the external directions. So when you have a family where you have a husband, wife, mom, dad, and then you have kids, and then you have your kids' friends, or you have the parents have friends and the parents' friends have kids, you're invoking all of the directions. So 4P360 leadership, if your kids grow up with 4P360 leadership as an actual system of leadership, a system of influence, a system of how to go about getting their way, imagine the difference that could make in families. Now I'll tell you, as a martial arts instructor who teaches kids sometimes, you can, if you know 4P360, you can see how much of this I'm doing with the kids. And a simpler thing in class, the kids know, like, if you whine, you don't get your way. That's just one of the rules. And that if you say please, I will probably say yes unless I have a good reason not to. But if you forget to say thank you, I take the yes away. And it's because what I want to make sure works for the kids, that what works for the kids is the behavior we want to reinforce. The behaviors that we would like to extinguish, we want to make sure doesn't work on the kids. So whining, complaining, screaming, crying, we don't give kids their way for having those kind of selfishly motivated meltdowns, because we don't want them to feel like bad behavior is the path to power. Right now we have a young lady, cute little girl, and that's sometimes one of her challenges is she is cute. She knows she's cute. She knows she's adorable. And she likes attention. Well, do you get attention usually by blending in with everyone else? Do you get attention by being different? Well, if the class is doing what they're supposed to do, guess how she gets attention? Misbehavior, exactly. And what we do with her to go out of our way is when she does well, we give her extra special attention for doing well, and we tend to ignore her bad behavior. And then if she behaves too badly, she just gets taken out of the equation for a short time and doesn't get to have the attention. Well, what ends up happening very, very quickly is she finds like, oh, when I walk through the doors of this building and I come onto this training floor, I get what I want, attention, by being a good karate kid. And why do we do that with her? It's because we want to reinforce the behavior we want to reinforce. Good karate kid behavior. And the platinum rule says, treat her the way she wants to be treated, and she likes the attention. And she comes from a bigger family. So how do you get the attention when you're in the bigger family? Well, you have to have behavior different from the others, some way to stand out. And so we just make sure that the way she stands out, the way she knows that she's the center of attention, is through good behavior, not bad behavior. And in that, we're also training the parents. We're training the siblings of the parents, so the aunts and uncles, by showing them how this works and showing them the influence it has on their kid. So all the directions apply, and in particular, reverse leadership. And what I was just talking about is just a perfect example of that. Reverse leadership is a key. We're teaching our children what works on us, how to get, in this case, attention from us. But when it comes to things like whining, complaining, screaming, crying, throwing a tantrum, if that's the path to power, if that's the way to get what they want, well, we just taught them to do more of that. But if what they know is the way to get what they want is a please and a thank you, and that works, and the whining, complaining, screaming, dropping on the ground, screaming bloody murder like you're torturing them because you won't give them what it is they asked for in the store, and that's how to get what they want, well, then that's what they're going to do. We just taught them. Now, just think about adults. If you go to work, and work has a bonus structure that if you do this behavior, we'll give you an extra $1,000. And you want an extra $1,000. You're going to look at the list and see if that's something you'd be willing to do. So what if the list of things to do includes be dramatic, complain about your boss, and go in and get in your boss's face and cuss him out, and we'll give you a $1,000 bonus. And you want $1,000. What are you going to do? You're going to go do that stuff. And that's just a hopefully ridiculous adult version of the same thing sometimes we're teaching the kids. So reverse leadership works in families as much or even more than it works in business. Because people are learning on a day-to-day, ongoing basis what works with mom, what works with dad, what works with my kid. As I tell the kids, make sure what works on you is what you want more of. I have a very clean definition of nagging. You're being nagged if you have to be asked or told the same thing 4 or more times. And when I ask in an open room, how many people like to be nagged? Nobody likes to be nagged. How many of you would prefer to never be nagged? Hands go up. No one wants to be nagged. How many of you enjoy nagging someone? Every once in a while I get 1 or 2 hands, but most of the time no one raises their hand. And how many of you would rather never have to nag anybody ever? And a bunch of hands go up. Even the people who kind of enjoy nagging people sometimes, even they say, well, I'd much rather not have to do it. Here's the simple thing. If you know what nagging is 4 or more times, if you're not going to do it, just say you're not going to do it. And if someone says they're not going to do it, stop trying to get them to do the thing they're not going to do and just make it a policy is I will not respond to nagging. I already told you I'm not doing it, but then here's the key. If you say yes, you will do it, then do it before you have to get asked or told 4 times. Ideally on 0 to 1 time. Poof, nobody's nagging, nobody's getting nagged. Problem solved. That's part of reverse leadership. If what it takes is follow up, and pressure, and then begin to get louder and begin to get more angry and then begin to treat it like it's a big crisis and then you act, then you're telling people, it's like, well, don't even bother with that asking nicely thing. That doesn't work on me. Just go straight to temper tantrum and then I'm going to do something. I was just talking about this concept recently. If I say no, and someone gets angry, that does not mean I should have said yes. But if the only time I ever say yes is only when people get angry, then people know the anger is the only path to yes. The path to yes should be a reasonable request, a loving request. You make the ask and get the yes on principle. I personally don't like to ever get someone to agree with me because I'm upset. No, agree with me if you think I have a point. But if you don't think I have a point, don't agree with me. Don't say yes if you have a reason to say no. That my anger might make you go take a look at it, because my anger tends to be pretty principled. Tends to, not always, only a tendency. And that might be a reason to go look at it again to see if maybe, you made a good decision. But if you look at it and say, yeah, I made a good decision, then the fact I'm angry is irrelevant. And part of reverse leadership means you do not capitulate to my anger. So we're practicing reverse leadership. And then when we talk about teaching our kids, what do we want to teach them? Self-leadership. It's an ideal that we're after with them. And we must also deeply consider our reverse leadership. 4P360 applies in romances. A simple thing in romance is lead like you want to be led. A lot of people say, well, who's leading in the romance? Well, let's back up and take a look at what we're talking about leadership. Should romantic partners have influence with each other? Yes. Should romantic partners be making decisions, especially if it's going to involve the couple, and make decisions thinking about the couple? Or just, I'm going to do what I want, and you're going to come or not come based upon what I decide you're going to... Well, that's not a partnership. That's a, I get to be me, and you get to be an accessory in my life. And so do you want to do good couple-level decision-making? Of course you do. Do you want to solve couple problems as a couple? Of course you do. Do you want to offer guidance to one another? Of course you do. Do you want to know, if you want to have a relationship with me, would you like some guidance on how to do that most effectively? Would you like to know what my love languages are? Would you like to know the kind of places I like to go to eat? Would you like to know the kind of things I might like on my Christmas list? Of course you would. In a couple's relationship, would you like both the husband and the wife, or the boyfriend and the girlfriend, to exercise some responsibility and get their responsibilities handled? Of course you would. Would you like them to be a good example of a husband, a good example of a wife, a good example of a man, a good example of a woman, a good example of a boyfriend, a good example of course you would. And would you like the people to take initiative, or just to be reactive to situations? Of course you want them to be proactive. So 4P360 applies in romances. Lead like you want to be led. And of course you're looking at the pillars, you're looking at the rules. Leadership in romances typically is leading across. Now, in some husband-wife dynamics, you get situations where he will lead like he's leading down, or she will lead like she's leading up. But even if that's the case, that's still leadership. I think, based upon what I've seen, a lot of women have a lot of success if they try to lead their man like she's leading up, and men have more success if he tries to lead his wife like he's leading across. And that works for a lot of relationships. I personally think it's largely a lead-across relationship myself. The exact manifestations may vary, but the principles used should be reciprocal. That however I show up is how I'm teaching you to show up. Whatever I'm asking of you, I'm teaching you as a reasonable ask in a romantic relationship. Using marriage as an example, love, honor, cherish, and the rest of the list, we practice loving. We want to be loved, we practice loving. We want to be honored, we practice honoring. We want to be cherished, we practice cherishing. We create this reciprocity, not this demand, you give to me, you give to me, you give to me, but a reciprocity. We show our worthiness of what we want by what we bring to the relationship. And showing up in the relationship, ready to be in the relationship, here's my package that I offer. Here's the benefits, and then, here's the detriments. And it could be a simpler thing like, I have, at this particular moment, I'm looking at where I'm going to be moving. Well, suppose I'm going to be moving away next year. But I'm in a dating relationship right now. Well, the benefits is like who I am and what I do and all of that stuff. But one of the downsides is, well, I'm leaving within the next 12 months. Well, that would kind of be a detriment to a relationship, because then you get like long-term questions, long-distance questions. Because if we want to go long-term and it's going to turn long-distance, like following questions, how sure am I about where I'm going to go? And all of those things is part of the package. How do you treat someone? A similar thing like what kind of vocabulary do you use? What sort of things, activities would you expect and engage in a romance? How much time would you expect? All of these things are part of being worthy of what you want. That there's always things that we hope to have in a relationship. And is what you show up with worthy of the things that you're asking for? And that's a question that sometimes we don't think about enough. A lot of people think about what they want in a relationship, but they don't think a lot about what they offer in the relationship. But what does the other person want in a relationship? It's not good enough to just be out there looking for Mr. Right or looking for Miss Right. It's important to be the dream person for the dream person. That if you find the person, a reasonably existing real life person that's the kind of person you would be looking for, are you the kind of person they would be looking for? I was just having a conversation with a friend about a negative manifestation of that. He was talking to a woman in particular, and she's going on about all the stuff that she wants, and he's going, I don't hear how in this there's anything in it for me. She has a clear picture in her head of what she wants, what she wants, what she wants, what she wants. But there's nothing in this mix about what she offers. It's like, And if that's happening this early in the connection, if that is kind of laying the precedent for what to expect later on, I mean, he's done taking steps forward. That's as much information as he needs. If someone shows up and says, what I want, what I want, what I want, what I want. Imagine you go to a job interview and they're trying to hire you for a job and they're telling you what they're looking for, what they're looking for, what they're looking for, what they're looking for, but they won't tell you what the compensation package is. They won't tell you what they offer you. They won't tell you, the hours they're going to offer you. They won't even tell you what your pay is going to be. They won't tell you whether or not you get insurance. They won't tell you whether or not you get vacation days. They won't tell you whether they just want you to show up and give them everything that they want. And you don't know what the deal is going to be in the other way. Well, in business, we know that'd be insane. And likewise, if you are the business and someone shows up and says, well, I want to make this much money and I want to have these benefits and this many vacation days and I want to have all these, and you're going, okay, I don't hear anywhere in here where you're telling us the value you're going to show up with. So in business, we see how just totally ridiculous that would be. But it's the same thing in our personal relationships. I might look like, well, what I'm looking for in a woman is A, B, C, and I have my list. And someone says, okay, well then, as a man, what do you offer in a relationship as a man that is worthy of what you want from a woman? I say, well, what do you mean? Well, she'll just accept me as I am. Like, not quite the way that works, because if you want a quality woman, she's going to have options. Just like we've talked about in 4P360 Leadership and Organization and curating your team. If you're going to curate your community, one of the things to remember is the best of the best of the best always has options upon options upon options. So if someone wants the best of men or the best of women, the one who has the most options, well, what would make you a good option? Why would they want to be with you? Why would being with you be copper rule, big picture, long game, healthy for them? How would that be a positive thing, a principled thing? And then treat them like you would expect someone else to treat them. So if you're in a romance, if you're in a marriage, treat your partner like you would expect someone else to treat your partner. With the same dignity, the same respect, the same honor. And this is key. Using an unfortunately common principle called lawful target, the idea of lawful target is, well, I can be mean to you because we're married. And we see that all the time in society. It's like, you two argue like an old married couple. You bicker like an old married couple. Well, is that really what any of us are aiming for in relationships? Like, well, you look like someone that would be great to fight with. You look like someone who would be great to be insulted by. You look like someone who I would enjoy spending the rest of my life being mean to you. I would love to spend the rest of my life having you tell me I'm always wrong. That's not usually what we're signing on for. We're signing on for love, honor, cherish, have, hold. That's what we're signing on for. But lawful target says, I have permission to be mean to you. I have permission to be the better or worse. I have permission to be the worse. Well, that's not the way that deal's supposed to work. So you treat them like you expect someone else to treat them. Some people give themselves permission to treat romantic partners worse than we'd ever tolerate anyone else treating our partner. Now, as a man, particularly as a man who spent half a century of his life studying martial arts, you can imagine I have kind of a protector instinct, right? That shouldn't surprise anybody. If I would protect my wife from the insults of another man, if I would stand up for her and basically tell the guy, dude, not cool, you need to stop. You need to not be disrespectful to my wife. You need to not be crude to my wife. My wife is not just a piece of meat. My wife is not someone to be treated that badly. Well, I should make sure she has no need to be protected from me. So if someone else would yell at her and I would get in and say, hey, you don't yell at my wife like that. I shouldn't be the one yelling at her. Where if there were two of me, the loving husband part of me should never have to step up to the one who's being the jerk. Hey, Scott, you leave my wife alone. Because I'm going to say, well, that's my wife. I can be mean to her if I want. Well, that's lawful target. We don't do lawful target for P360 leadership. And so if we would protect them from others, we should give no cause for them to need protecting from us. As part of what we call the upgrade principle. The closer you get, the more you give them your best. You treat them like you would expect someone else to treat them. You treat them with the level of respect you would expect others to treat them. You treat them with the dignity you would expect other people to treat them. You treat them with the honor, with the deference, with the compliments. All of that stuff you would expect someone else to treat them. And you don't do the things that you would stand up to someone else if they did it to their face, especially in public. And then another big one for romance. Submission as a gift to the submitted. I've been talking about this more and more lately because it's been really resonating with a lot of people. But this powerful principle is about what submission is for. We often think of submission as in wives submit to your husbands, and everyone to submit to everyone, and to always be under submission to authority, and all of those things, as someone doing what we want them to do for us. So for a lot of old school men in particular, the idea of like, well, my wife's supposed to submit to me. What's that mean? Well, she just has to do what I want. And you go, clearly you were not trained by me, because that is not the me rules. The principle here is that the leader is a gift to those who submit to the leader's leadership. The leader takes the difficult things off the table for the submitted. The job of a leader, even in business, is to help those the leaders responsible for leading know what they're supposed to do. Even as simple a thing as the schedule. So what if, as a leader, you told the person, well, just make sure you'll work on time. So, well, when am I working? I'm not going to tell you. I haven't decided yet, but you make sure you're there. What do? At least if you have a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday job, you know, okay, 9 to 5 Monday to Friday, I already know when I'm supposed to be there. What am I supposed to do when I'm there? Well, you know, get the project done. So what project? Well, I haven't really decided, but just be doing it. Like, well, what's it supposed to look like? Well, I don't really know, but just make sure it gets done and I like it. I mean, we wouldn't do that in business. Part of the job of the formal leadership in business is to create a framework and provide a structure and provide guidance, provide job descriptions, provide key performance indicators, so those under the leadership of the formal leaders don't have to figure it out for themselves. Don't have to sit around going, I don't know, am I doing the right thing, the wrong thing? Am I going to get a bonus? Am I going to get fired? I don't know, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So even just on that level. And then the leader is supposed to provide training, supposed to provide resources, supposed to make it easy for you to do your job. And in fact, an author friend of mine who wrote a book was talking about this, a manager who thought that her job was to get people to do what they're supposed to do, darn it. It's like, no, your job is supposed to be to serve them as a resource to help them unleash what it is they are best at within that role. And in one particular case, in a pharmacy situation, there was someone who was always in front and someone who was always in back. Now, they were both peers, they were both equals. The back person was handling all of the detailed T-crossing, I-dotting part and getting all the right pills and getting it all counted out and all the labels put on all kind of the grunt work of working at pharmacy. Well, the other was doing all the people work. Well, how did that happen? Well, because the detail person in the back loves the details. That's the part of the job that particular pharmacist loves to do. Really good at it, really efficient at that. With the people, not so much. The other person was a fantastic people person, would connect with people, remember things about people, showed up with such enthusiasm that they did their division of labor to both unleash what they were best at, and that was unequal. One person spent most of the time in the back, one person spent most of the time in the front, even though they had the same job. And they did that because they were structuring their relationship at work to unleash each other's potential. And that's part of submission as a gift. Each of them submitted one to another in cross leadership to unleash each other's strengths so I can operate in my strength and you can operate in your strength. And it created this amazing dynamic that made them practically famous in the medical community in the area. That's the place you want to send them. They will take care of you. They will take care of you fast. You will get what you need to get. You will have all of your information. They will be right every single time. And they will talk to you and explain stuff to you, and you will enjoy going there. But you have two pharmacists. Same job description. Different skill sets, different strengths. And their boss, their formal leadership, helps structure their relationship to allow them to do that. And then they created that powerful dynamic. So the principle here is that the leader is a gift to the submitted. Getting to submit should be a gift. A chance of having a lighter mental load. A chance to have a lighter emotional load. A chance to have a lighter even physical load. Because the leader is evaluating what's going on and is making judgment calls to help make things easier for the other person in the partnership. And think about how simple this is in both directions, by the way. So in particular, I was talking to a woman and she loves cooking. That's perfect. He would rather not cook. That is a perfect submission relationship. What are we having for dinner? Whatever she decides. She knows what he likes, knows what he doesn't like, and so she knows, okay, there's a couple of things I might normally make if it was just for myself that I know he doesn't like, so I won't make those. There's some special things I know he especially likes, so I'll make that more often. And he doesn't have to think about what's for dinner. He doesn't have to make a decision. He has no mental load about dinner. He has no mental load about grocery shopping. She's got all that handled. And he just goes along with it. So what's he doing? He is submitting to his cook wife. She's taking the lead on that. And that's something she enjoys doing. And his submission to his cook is a gift to him. It allows him to just do all this other stuff and be doing the things that he takes initiative on, and he doesn't have to take initiative on dinner. That's already handled. And so even in like small individual things, it's not always one of you's the leader and one of you submits. It's on a thing-by-thing basis. It's like, it's okay, honey, you relax, I've got this. It's as simple a thing as submission is a gift to the submitted. And 4P360 leadership applies alone. Now we already know this because there's this whole self-leadership thing. So even if I'm living a life alone, I have no romance, I have no family here, all my family is gone, I have no friends, maybe I'm new in town, I haven't made any friends yet. And right now it's just me by myself. 4P360 still applies, and we know this already from self-leadership. Self-leadership and self-submission. Building on the idea of submission as a gift to the submitted, we should be self-leading in a way that my self-leadership is a gift to me, submitting to my own leadership. If we make good decisions, we submit to the good decisions. So my style of leadership to myself should be, okay, Scott, here's the decision. I should say, all right, sounds good to me, let's go for it. And I submit to my own leadership the same way I would submit to another leader who's making good decisions. Am I going to acknowledge that, yes, that is a brilliant decision, that is a good idea, that's a good commitment, we should totally do that. And then I'm going to blow off my leader? Of course I'm not going to do that. I shouldn't do it to myself, because I am my own leader, and I should submit to my own leadership. So if I make a good decision, then just submitting to my own decision should be a worthwhile thing to do that adds value to my life. So what does that mean? Well, when we make good decisions, we should just submit to our own good decisions because it adds value to our lives. Now, what if we don't think it's a good decision? Well, I shouldn't have made the decision in the first place. And basically, it's all just part of our double O leadership. When we get good at leading ourselves, we're better qualified to lead others. We get good at making good decisions for ourselves. We get good at solving problems for ourselves. We get good at working the strategies to overcome challenges for ourselves. We get good at being responsible for ourselves. We get good at all of the things that are the leadership things that apply me to me, leader me to submitted me, Scott to Scott, role to role, whatever it is that I take care of me, so that all I have to do is take that leadership part and I just open it up to others, and I do with others the exact same thing I do with myself, and I'm ready to be a leader in an organization. I'm ready to be a leader in a friendship. I'm ready to be a leader in a romance because I am practicing solid leadership me to me. Likewise, I'm ready to be submitted to leadership because I'm practicing submitting to my own good leadership. And then all I have to do is open up the way I submit to my own good leadership to submit to other people's good leadership. The way I submit to my own good ideas, my own good thinking, and submit to other people's good ideas and other people's good thinking. And all I have to do is let this inside healthy relationship dynamic I've been cultivating me to me while I'm brand new in something, and just let it out and treat other people the same way I've been treating myself. When we get good at leading ourselves, when we get good at submitting to ourselves, then we are practiced at leading for others and submitting for others. When we get good at it, we're better able to join a team and both lead and submit there too. And a couple of different directions of looking at it. Some of us will already be good at one and sometimes not so good at the other. Some of us are already good at both. I don't see that as often as I wish I did. Because I would like to see it on an every time basis. Often one or the other of these really hits people. So whichever one does for you, and hopefully you're going, yeah, I do both of those pretty well already because I learned that lesson a long time ago. So here's one. Remember we talked about, say for instance, if I'm married, I need to treat my wife in such a way that if anyone else treated her that way, I wouldn't step up and say, hey! Well, treat yourself like you treat someone else. So if I would think it would be inappropriate for me to treat someone else this way, I shouldn't be treating myself that way. 4P360 self-leadership means you're applying the 4 pillars and the 4 rules, you to you. When Scott's leading Scott, I need to be powerful, which means I need to get my stuff done. I want to be practical. Meaning I need to get the stuff done in a way that's healthy for me long term. That this could be a good strategy, a good standard operating procedure. If I make this a habit, the outcome will be good. It needs to be principled, which means I need to know why is this good, so I can make other decisions based upon the same principles, so that I can have the integrity, the integration of my principles, of my values, working uniformly across a wide range of things. And I want my life to be positive. So I'm treating me the same way I think I ought to treat other people. And the 4 rules. I need to think through things. I need to not do to myself things I would know I shouldn't be doing to other people. I should do to myself things I know would be good to do to other people. And if there's any idiosyncratic things that are unique to me, I need to take care of those, just like I would do with somebody else. So whether you're leading yourself or you're submitting to your own leadership of yourself, treat yourself the way you treat someone else. You practice good treatment of other people. You to you first. Assume you're practicing how to treat others by how you treat yourself. Because you are. You are a person. And you are practicing treating a person a certain way. You are practicing how you make excuses for people or don't make excuses for people. You're practicing how you judge people or how you don't judge people. You're practicing how you condemn people or don't condemn people. You're practicing how you compliment people or don't compliment people. You're practicing all of these things, you to you. So practice the things you know you need to be practicing to be better for other people. If you think you'd be a jerk if you treated others a certain way, well then don't be a jerk to yourself. And in fact, at one point I was talking to a friend of mine, and the last thing I said before I said goodbye, I said, don't be a bully to my friend. Because sometimes she was being awfully mean to herself in her own head. And she knew if you talk to someone else that way, you'd know you're being a jerk. And because you do it consistently, we call that a bully. You're my friend. I wouldn't stand for my friend being bullied. So don't bully my friend. So don't be a jerk to yourself. Like you already know don't be a jerk to other people. Well, good. Don't be a jerk to yourself either. Practice being not a jerk. Practice being a good person. Practice treating people well on you. If you think you'd be ineffective as a leader if you treated others a certain way, then don't do that either. Make clean decisions. Enforce your decisions. If you were the boss and you said, okay, you need to be here 9 to 5, and someone blows in, 9, 10, after lunch, whatever. They do their work, they don't do their work, or whatever. Would you just let that slide? First pillar is powerful. So you need to be powerful in your self-leadership too. And in your self-submission. Choosing to submit to the good decision. And so now for some people, treat yourself like you treat someone else doesn't always fly for them as the way to get to good behavior self to self. So we have the other one. Treat yourself like you would expect someone else to treat you. This is the flip side of the previous point. If you think someone else would be a jerk or a poor leader, if they did it to you, then you don't do it to yourself. If you think hey, that would be great, well then great, then do that to yourself. That would be a loving, honoring, cherishing thing to do. Great, then do that to yourself. Pillars and rules. Pillars and rules. Powerful, practical, principled, positive, positive, positive. Copper, silver, gold, and platinum. Pillars and rules. You with you. Now connected to and expanding from 4P360 is Ohana. We talked about that in the closing lesson. And that is a whole thing unto itself. 4P360 leadership is part of nobility. But Ohana is oasis, harmony, assertiveness, nobility, and aloha. Or, as I always say, aloha! And seeking to build an oasis culture in your business is a whole thing. In your community, in your circle of friends, in your family, in your romance, and even just you with you. Oasis, be a refreshing refuge. When I'm alone with myself, can I drop my guard with myself? Or am I mean to myself? If I'm mean with myself, well then I can't drop my guard with myself. But having time alone, the decompressing, rather than being your own worst enemy. Harmony. An inside version of harmony is when your leader self and your submission self are both working together in good harmony. You don't even have to be the same to all get along. It's like just getting harmony between my own roles. all the different hats that I wear. Sometimes I get introduced as the Mad Hatter, meaning that, I am a lawyer and a real estate broker and an author and a seminar instructor and a coach and a counselor and a pastor, and there's just all of these different hats that I wear, and creating harmony between them so that I'm not a different person when I shift gears, that just different aspects of the reality of me show up. And so that's part of harmony, creating that inner peace so I don't have this internal conflict. And then assertiveness. Move forward on purpose with respect for others, even by myself. What is my forward? What is my purpose? And to have self-respect when I do it. And then nobility, be my highest and best self. And part of being my highest and best self is I show up for me as who I am wishing to be becoming. And I keep moving on that compass heading. And then aloha, the aloha spirit comes from Hawaii, and that is a loving spirit. And I need to have a loving spirit of me with me. And I need to make sure that I am showing the kind of love for me that I would show for other people, that I'm showing the kind of love for me and accepting the kind of love for me that I would like other people to be showing me too. And so being a self-integrated ohana, even me with me, and certainly me with a romance, even more so me with a family. Ohana literally means family, so of course it should hopefully show up with family, right? And then with your circle of friends and your community as a whole. All of these principles are universal. And that's the cool thing about principles, is they're inarguably true, that you can't really put up a strong argument against why this isn't a good thing. And then especially when you're talking about person-to-person, whole-person-to-whole-person relationship, or the whole Yori relationship trust matrix. I didn't mention that at all in the main program, but Yori stands for you, others, relationship, intimacy. And it applies in personal and professional relationships. In fact, in the Yori program series, I think it's Yori 110 is all Yori for business. Yori 100 is kind of an introduction to the relationship trust matrix. Yori is a Japanese boy's name that means trust, which means I can believe you and I can count on you. And it applies and harmonizes with 4P360 leadership, applies and harmonizes with Ohana. And basically with all of this stuff, 4P360, Ohana, Yori, go as far as you like. Be as good as you choose. It's a lot like in my martial arts. You can show up for a weekend seminar, and I can teach you some really cool stuff that will make you better at whatever it is I'm teaching you how to do, that will equip you with some tools and some skills. And if you will go apply them, something will be better. You could be in a more constant state of training and go from white belt through yellow belts, through purple belts, and eventually get a black belt. You could pursue mastery. And you could be going up through the master titles and be a sensei, be a renshi, be a kyoshi, be a hanshi. And really dig in and just have this compass heading of mastery. And this is a way you could choose to live life and keep acquiring tools. And in the case of the toolbox, I've acquired and integrated an integrated set of tools that works on the same principles throughout, so you're not having to keep changing gears every time something changes. The 4P360 is one of the fundamentals. To live your life powerfully. To live your life in a practical way. So if you keep building these habits and you make these habits, you will have the outcomes you aim for. To live life in a principled way. So as you encounter the new things that always come up in life that are different than has ever happened before, sometimes especially as technology changes, life is different now in the smartphone era than it was back in our day. Heck, even dating is different. I was talking to a friend of mine about our age, and man, when we were at the teens, 20s, dating ages, everything was live and in person. I mean, the closest you had to, e-communication was that, you might make a phone call. You might send a handwritten note. But, boy, it's different these days. The principles are the same, but the way you play the game is different. And we're kind of both discovering that. Now, I still do things kind of the old school way, because when I go out, I connect with people that I meet live or I get referred to or connected to in some way. And so I didn't realize how different that online game was. Go, whoa, okay, I do not play that game. I do not understand those rules. But I see that the way that game seems to be playing and my principles don't really seem to be matching up very well. So I think I'm just going to stay away from that game. But it's having those principles that allows you to make those determinations. And then positive, living a positive life. And then the rules and the directions and the oasis and harmony and assertiveness and nobility and aloha and getting to know yourself and always looking to yourself to be the answer. Because sometimes, we want other people to be the answer. You need to change. Well, I need to change. I'm half of this dynamic. And then the relationship as a separate thing. And when it comes to that relationship, and this is every relationship, this is a business relationship, this is a friendship. If we build a relationship, it's unique. My relationship with you is different than the relationship I had with anybody else, because you are a different person than I've ever had a relationship with anyone else with. So that means this relationship is unique. But here's the key. When we build an us, you show up as you, I show up as me. We're going to build this us. Whether it's a romantic us, whether it's a family us, whether it's a business us, whether it's a friendship us, or some mix of stuff. That us should elevate each one of us. That us should draw out the best in us. That us should feed our soul. And being able to build that us as a thing distinct from just the me, distinct from just the you. It's a higher third thing that helps each of us be better. Now, you want the pure business version of that? We call that a mastermind group. You can go all the way back 100 years to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. He's talking about masterminds. And that how the goal of the mastermind is to get a group of people together so all of you rise up together. You create this dynamic that elevates everyone in the group. Well, that's not just a business principle. That's a relationship principle. That's a friendship principle. That's just how people work in a dynamic team where the team draws out the best in you. And then the team becomes something bigger and more synergistic than even the collection of individuals, because of how you've come together in your strengths. And then intimacy is when you're getting to what's unique about me. What's unique about you? What's behind the veil? What's the things we don't always put out on stage in front of everybody? What are the things that are more personal? The things that might normally be more private, but we have enough of a connection that you can know some of the stuff that's personal. You can even know some of the stuff that's private. And building that Yori relationship trust. Because I know I can trust you. I know what I can count on you for. And we're doing all of these all the time. So 4P360, everywhere. Ohana, everywhere. Yori, everywhere. This is all very cool, totally integrated stuff. So if you're learning it for business and you see it applies everywhere, use it everywhere. And it is my desire that all of us live these vivid lives. It is my desire that all of us get to be whole people with whole lives. And that we take all of these great things that we learn, we walk it out into a whole personhood. And into our whole lives, we bring it to other people in our world to make a difference so that we can live vividly. And that we can be epicenters where this radiates out from us. This whole person, whole life, kind of vivid bliss living. And when I say vivid, I mean that there's energy to it, it's active, there's power to it. And by bliss, I mean love, joy, and peace. We get to live these energetic, powerful, strong, muscular sort of love. And that we get to have this kind of cool joy that we can be looking at things and even facing hardship and go, this is going to be fun. and that we can have lives of inner and external peace so that we can have quality life. And that all of us can be part of my mission. Part of my mission is to be an epicenter of whole person, whole life, vivid bliss. If that sounds good to you, I invite you to join me in it. 4P360 Ohana and Yoyo are part of that, along with all the stuff I do is aimed at this thing so that we can make our lives better and the lives around us better, which I call heroic. The heroes are the ones who make it better. And we can all make it better. All make it more vivid. All make it more blissful, more loving, more joyful, more peaceful. As whole people, living and enjoying and manifesting powerfully our whole lives.